Home run for AOSSM, aligning organizational goals with predictive analytics. Thank you for that introduction. And because we got plenty of slides, let's get started. So good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for having us. My name is Collier Faubion. I am a lead solutions engineer with Nimble AMS. More importantly, I'd like to introduce my friend James. James?
Thank you. James Jankovec, Director of IT at AOSSM.
I gotta like swallow it to get it to, there you go. Sorry, I interrupted you. Keep going.
Okay,
I'm
thank
gonna
you.
do that again.
James Jankovec, Director of IT, AOSSM, the American Orthopaedic Society for Sports Medicine.
And as mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about why combining the ability that is offered to you by predictive analytics gives you the opportunity to hit a home run. I really thought that baseball analogy would go better with this audience, but whatever. When it comes to meeting organizational goals. To get through that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what AOSSM is, what they're doing, what they have to offer their constituents. We'll talk about some of the challenges that they were working through and how they turn those into strategic goals. What they did to get those things, and some of the findings that came out of that, as well as opportunities that they learned through processing that. And before we get started with that, quick opportunity for a brief commercial. My name is Collier Faubion. As I said, I'm with Nimble AMS, formerly Community Brands, now Momentive Software. We are a leading AMS solution built on Salesforce. You can see that across the bottom. All the cool stuff that we bring to the ecosystems right there in the middle. You can extend it to the left and to the right, whether you use the Salesforce App Exchange or various on-platform. Everybody cool with that? All right. Let's get to the fun stuff. So, James, will you tell us a little bit about what the American Orthopaedic Society for Sports Medicine actually does?
Sure thing. As you see on the slide there, our mission is to be the premier global sports medicine organization for orthopedic surgeons and everyone else who serves an active population. Keep people moving.
Could you break that last part down for me? Because I heard you, but it didn't.
Right. We serve people, active people of all ages, and we want to make sure that people can get up and do sports or any other physical activity that they want to do. And if they get injured, we want to fix them up and get them back.
Did you say do the sports? Okay, just making sure. That's AOSSM, and that's the gentleman in the middle of this picture is...
That is Tiki Barber, and he was our presidential guest speaker at our last annual meeting, and those are some of our wonderful members.
Tiki Barber, well known for doing the sports. Yep. So that's AOSSM. So let's talk a little bit about, and I would like for you to tell us, tell the collective us here, some of the challenges. And I thought the way you phrased this to me was particularly interesting. So we threw it on a slide. How do we make the most of our investment in a modern AMS? Which, when I read that, I'm hearing some of the selection process was already done.
AI. That's how you make it.
AI, right, sure, as we've heard. In addition to AI, some of the selection process had already been completed. So you guys had moved forward. You were adopting Nimble AMS as your AMS. So you weren't necessarily looking for predictive analytics, but you wanted to maximize the platform that you had chosen, and predictive analytics was one of the solutions that you saw to do that. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we moved to Nimble AMS back in 2022. And like you said, we're on a Salesforce platform. It's very powerful. They have all these tools on the back end. We knew about Einstein. We wanted to start taking advantage of that and looking into our data in different ways.
And big takeaway for all of us, regardless of where you are, AI has been a popular topic so far. To James's actually very personal and practical point, they had made the choice to move to a platform, an enterprise platform-based AMS, and they were able to look inside at the tools already available to them. And as we'll see, it gave them a lot of positive takeaway by maximizing that. So don't always think that you have to grow or expand or, more importantly, acquire another solution. There might be something hiding just behind you that can give you that support. And that was kind of the case here with AOSSM. So I want to ask you if you could share a little bit about how you got there. Now, membership lapse, spoiler alert, that's what we're going to be talking about. That's a popular point for a lot of folks, but you hadn't really done a dedicated, targeted focus on lapsing members prior to this initiative. Is that correct?
Correct. Except for, just looking at a list of stuff on Excel.
Sure. So you were more or less comfortable with your lapse rates as it compared to organic growth? I mean, comfortable maybe is putting some words in your mouth, but you had settled with that.
The rate to be zero, but we have very good rates no matter what.
Sure.
But we wanted to get into this platform and really take a look at it and see what we could learn about our membership and what would cause somebody to not renew their membership with us.
Got it. Okay. And then once you found a tool that gave you the ability to predict a member's likelihood or non-likelihood to allow their membership to lapse, there was additional steps in the middle. We talk about process identification. So understanding what you would then do when faced with learning that someone either was or was not likely. And was that a lot of internal, was that reaching out to the membership team, reaching out to the internal staff process? How did you start to build that picture? Again, don't spoil what's
Sure.
coming.
Yeah. Yeah. Specifically talking with our membership team and kind of saying, does this stuff make sense to you?
Mhm.
You know, what we're seeing here, is this in your mind with how you would think the membership is going to act?
Sure, sure. And again, to some degree, what tools do I have at my disposal once I know, again, what this lapse risk is? What can I do still here from within the system? Part of it as well, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then the last point you had said, and this, so spoiler alert, I am not an IT person. I used to build airplanes. That was my whole career. So to me, ease of use is rather critically important. But you are an IT guy. So you had mentioned to me that you wanted a tool that was very intuitive, not necessarily driven, these are my words, not yours, driven by like clicks only, no code, but you wanted an ease of use tool. Why was that important to you, considering you personally would have had the expertise to do something a little more techie?
Sure. Well, it's easy enough. I didn't have a choice. You have to use the tool as is. So, but yeah, you want to make sure that I'm an IT guy. Not every organization has IT staff available to them to dig into AI and predictive analytics and do all the things. So it's nice to see that this tool is user friendly enough that even a guy who builds airplanes could get in and build a model.
True story. Building airplanes is actually much easier than you guys would think. Just metal pieces. Anyway, so the tool that you use to do that, which we have a snapshot of right here, is the Einstein Prediction Builder tool. Now, we're gonna show the scorecard in just a minute, but to put a little bit more color on it, we consider this to be it's declarative, which means you can use drag and drop, all clicks. You don't have to understand how to write code. You don't have to be a data scientist. Einstein, we like to joke, Einstein is your data scientist. So he does all the heavy lifting. You can, through a wizard-based process, be walked through, okay, what do you want to predict? What are you looking for? Tell me. Basically, you pick an object. Are you looking at people? Are you looking at events? Are you looking at donations? Give me an idea. Okay, now you've determined. So then what do you want to change? Do you want the donations to go up? Do you want the membership renewal to be checked as a positive? Yes. And as it walks you through this process, it leverages all of the data that we all already have, right? All of our membership information, all of our financial history, everything that's already in our AMS, and it looks in the back and starts to build corollaries, basically. Is that right? Like, based off of all these different attributes, these are the ones that are most likely going to influence the item that you chose. And again, all of it's with clicks. You have lists of all your fields, you have lists of all your objects, and you just start to click your way through. And you need 400 records. Does that sound right?
Sounds right.
I think you need all you need is 400 records. If you don't have 400 records of the particular item that you're looking to predict, Einstein believes that there's not enough data there to build an accurate prediction. You could always, it's one of those things like the more, as we all did in statistics, the more data points you have, the better you can create that correlation. And someone much smarter than I, probably you, I won't speak for you, but determine that 400 is the magic number. All you need is 400 records. Einstein Prediction Builder will take you off the rest of the way. And that is what you use, correct?
Correct.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about how relatively new to your new platform, but you wanted to expand it with this type of predictive analytics tool. And you said something else that was interesting. We got a nice little fancy slide here because you needed a little bit of help to get started. But then once we kind of got you going, you were able to, could you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not that we needed help. I wanted help.
Oh, sure.
I wanted
of course.
some guidance. I wanted to make sure that I knew kind of everything that I needed to know going in. So we did work with community brands,
Momentum Software,
Nimble Services to do a short engagement, not to like 10 hours total. They helped us set up the model, talked us through all of the different aspects, things to look out for, and then kind of said, now you can run.
Right, go. Right. So we were the crawl, maybe.
You were the crawl.
Then the walk.
Then we walked, and then we iterated and we ran.
Sure. And obviously, we like to mention that just because, like you said earlier, there's lots of different levels of experience when it comes to data, when it comes to enterprise platforms, entry platforms, what have you. And we wanted to be there as much as you wanted us to be there.
Right.
I'm sure that we were just talking about Jeff Williams in the hallway, my colleague. I'm sure he would have been happy to have sold you the diamond package where we built it and gave you all the results. But the reality was you wanted to be able to adjust and to grow with it. And so we got you started, and then that was all you needed.
That was all I needed. And even the engineer said, here you go. There's not much more I can do for you. It's up to you to take this now and, continue to refine it and take action on what is presented.
Right. So again, I think what's prudent is knowing that the platform had that solution. We say know when to ask for help. You were comfortable enough saying, hey, can you help us get started? And then you were able to run, again, a declarative tool, more or less within the bounds of your own organization.
Mhm.
Cool. So some of the things, and I want to discuss this rather agnostically for the diverse audience that we have, but you mentioned a lot of things that you did that gave you the resources you needed to build a good prediction. So I put a couple of them here, and I grabbed rather general snapshots from one of my org, but so roll-up fields,
Right.
which is basically just summarizing actions or activities to a single data point. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. We wanted to make sure that we were bringing in every single possible data point we could about a member. And part of that is how much have they donated?
Mhm.
How many annual meetings have they attended? How many merchandise products have they purchased? All kind of builds a profile of engagement,
Sure.
which Prediction Builder is going to use to determine whatever we're asking. Right.
Right. So you're
In our
controlling.
case is for lapsings. We want to know, like, if you spend $1,000, are you at risk of lapsing or are you less at risk?
Right. So you basically took, so it for those who maybe don't know Nimble architecture as well, every person, they have a list of orders, and it's all the things that they buy. And if you make another purchase, you get another order. And so some of the things with these roll-up fields, which James' team did, is they said, okay, rather than having to look through all these orders, let's just put one little slot on that person's account that says, hey, this is all the money they've spent. And now we have one data point to maximize, so we can turn that offer on in our prediction. And you did refine it a little bit more nuance in that. So like
Right.
how much they donated versus how much they spent on t-shirts versus hot dogs and et cetera, et cetera.
Correct.
But rather than look at all those individual data points, you created roll-up summaries. Point number one. Point number two, you also started to bring in external data.
Correct.
And how did you do that?
That was a data loader import from our email automation platform. We didn't have a direct integration. Not really worth building that to do this kind of thing, but taking the engagement data from our email marketing was helpful because you can see some correlations.
Got it. And those less familiar, data loader is basically, that was dumb, a data loader. It just, you can get one raw file, in this case, probably an Excel file or CSV file, and you could take an external data source and suck it right into your AMS. In doing that with Nimble, you added that to the individual account.
Yes, that's on the account.
So now you have a summary of information. The example I have here, maybe if you did do an integration like with an LMS for learning management, you could have all that data taken from being hosted only in your LMS and adding it into your AMS, whereas then you could further maximize your prediction. And then the last one, some of those key attributes, rather than just a one-time load, you wrote all that directly into your AMS system.
Yeah.
Any more context or similar enough to the data loader?
No, similar enough to data loader. Either that or we're just kind of punching it in, or it gets loaded based on form fills. So
excellent. So we're maximizing all the data that we already have. We're bringing in external data sources that perhaps don't need for practical business reasons to be hosted in the AMS, but we want to leverage that in our prediction. So we bring all that in together, and then we
iterate.
What's the real word here? Pivot. There we go. Excellent. And then there was lots of iterations. This is a point that James made to me quite a few times. So why was constant iteration of your model? Why did you pivot the couch around the stairs so many times? What did that do for the quality of your model?
Well, it only helps to improve it. Ideal. It can go backwards, but I think once you see, you've done it one time and it gives you a report card that you saw a few slides ago. It'll let you know how is this looking? How well am I able to predict that this member is going to lapse or not? And the first time often is going to be low. You're not going to have really great results, and you need to kind of comb through the information it's giving you and say, well, I don't need the deceased field on the to be part of this because obviously they're not renewing again.
Yeah, deceased is probably a non-renewal target. Yep.
But yeah, as we iterated, as we looked at the data, the quality only goes up, and the quality of the prediction is going to be better.
So. Excellent. And is that something that you would do once a week, once a day, multiple times per day? And are you continuing to do that? Or is there a point where you're comfortable saying, the level of fidelity of this model is good, I'm just going to start to run with the results.
I don't think I'll ever be 100% comfortable. But as we go on, and we're going to get into the findings, and then you'll see kind of where we're coming from. But you have to keep iterating it every year. You should be at least running this at least a few times a year, maybe monthly, if you can, just to get that information more updated as people come in, as they renew, as they join, as they update their profile information, they buy things.
Sure.
That all feeds into it, and that all can help adjust. And at the end of each year, you're going to want to look at who did lapse.
Right.
How was the prediction?
And that's going to make the score going better because some of the things that were indicators before maybe are less so now.
Correct.
Great point. Great point. And this is that scorecard
There
that
it
we've
is.
been referring to.
It was there earlier.
This was the takeaway. So when you complete this prediction using Einstein's Prediction Builder, a lot of stuff, we'll hit on a couple of points here. But some of the things that you mentioned, is this a point? Oh, look at that. So you never turn your back to your audience, but here we are. So first, you were predicting individuals.
Correct.
Right. AOSSM is primarily a individual membership based organization, but you could have predicted, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but you picked that. Like you defined, just look through my data set and just look at individuals.
Look at the account objects.
Right. Okay. We also have it's a type yes or no,
Mhm.
which means, are they going to lapse? Are they not going to lapse? Pretty binary, pretty easy, right? And all these you picked in the wizard. You wrote your results. So you got a score, a raw score.
Yeah, at the end of it, it generates a score from 0 to 100.
And what I thought was really cool that you guys did is you then wrote that score onto the individual for whom it was calculated. So every person in your database now has a 0 to 99% likely to not renew.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yeah.
There we go. And then other item here, and these top predictors, we're going to break those down in just a second.
Right.
But the scorecard actually gives you that list of things that were either highly correlated to their likelihood to lapse or not as highly correlated.
Right. And just like with an engagement story, we have that on the user profile. So when customer service is interacting with a member, they can see that. They can know, okay, this person would be at risk of lapsing. So they have a little bit more of a white glove treatment with them.
Yeah,
Help
take a
them
little bit
along.
more care. If they're kind of sitting on the precipice, you want to be particularly nice. So that's kind of what you looked at and how this prediction was built. But let's look at some of the findings. Again, unique, obviously, to AOSSM and your data set. But some takeaways, especially ones that I thought was interesting. Now, you didn't tell me this until after we talked through the whole thing, but you had a whole list of, I'm pretty sure it's this, 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 and this.
Right.
And the data said,
Same stuff.
you were right.
Yeah.
Does it always?
Probably not.
Probably not. Luckily for AOSSM, they had a whole series of, and a couple people have said this today, who's making decisions based off hunches, who says I want to do this because it feels right. In this case, you would have been correct, but you've now been empowered by having the data to back you up.
Yeah.
So that's the validation with context only gives you additional insights into why that was. Your big one was engagement scoring, right? Which makes sense logically.
Right. You could just assume that your lower engaged members are more likely to lapse because they just don't care as much.
Right. So maybe not a linear interpretation, like it wasn't perfect, but it was a really strong indicator.
Right.
And then what I thought was interesting is the people who couldn't be bothered, I'm putting words in their mouths, who couldn't be bothered to tell you what their last name is, what their address is, probably not going to take the time to renew in 12 months time. Is that correct?
Right.
So just blank fields in their personal profile is one of the biggest indicators.
That is the biggest.
Is the biggest indicator.
Yeah.
And then I thought this one was interesting. Member type. So certain memberships are inherently less likely. Could you break that down?
What we saw was an early career member type was at more risk of lapsing, and that again is sort of obvious if you think about it. If they decide maybe this career just isn't for me. It's a little expensive right now. I still got student loan payments, that kind of thing. So it wasn't super surprising to see that, but it's nice to have data behind.
Sure. So it was primarily those entry career levels.
Right.
I guess that makes sense. I mean, and an interesting thought to explore is if they could be incentivized from a cost perspective or another perspective to be a higher class of membership. I wonder how that would change. But again, you run it next year.
Yeah.
And then so we have these signs of trouble. So these are various factors that are correlated to a higher likelihood to lapse.
Right.
And the big ones that I was noticing is the is null. So all these fields, all these bits of information that you asked them for that they either chose or never got around to completing.
Right.
Right. Any other things that stuck out to you?
No, that was primarily it. I was hoping, and what we're going to do going forward is the data update campaign and try and see if we can get some of this stuff filled in. Because what I was really ideally looking for was this person with this specialty is more like this person who likes this, has a specialty in this anatomical, focus, lives in this part of the country. I wanted to see something like that.
Sure. But the biggest indicator was
They just, if they're not filling, if everything is null, they're not filling their profile out, they're not coming and telling us anything.
right.
It's not a great sign.
And that's a big takeaway for all of us, because as we've talked a lot about AI, we're using data right now for predictions. Your ability to leverage all of these tools is only as good as the data you have behind it. And in this case, the data you have behind it, that was the strongest indicator, was no data whatsoever. Now, this could have been filtered to eliminate the records that had that as is null, which is an option, but that was still a valuable data point for you to understand in and of itself. Correct?
Yeah.
Signs of trouble. And then on the flip side, the prediction also gave us the things that were least likely to be correlated with a lapsed member. So things that your best and brightest, your champions are doing, you get that in reverse. So not only do you see what makes them more likely to lapse, but your analysis gave you the things that make them less likely to lapse. Basically confirming, verifying different things, having individual portal accounts, actively getting into their accounts. Anything else that stuck out to you?
No, nothing specifically. I think, it all is pretty obvious that the more money you spend, the more products you buy, that kind of thing, the more likely you're going to maintain your membership. So
Sure.
It's good to see.
Right. It's good to know. Again, backing up your hypotheses. So a little bit then, so now we have data, we have numbers, we have math that justifies it. Any actions or specific things that you want to talk about for Take It Away?
Yeah, we're planning on doing a profile data update campaign, trying to get people come in and update these fields. So, and then what I believe will happen after that next year when we run this is we'll see some different results with what is more correlated with the lapsed number.
Sure.
As we get these things filled in. Yeah, and specific messaging for those who are at risk at lapsing, really reaching out and kind of doing the marketing thing and making sure that they're, getting all of the value out of the membership that they can, so that they can come back.
Right on. That is the goal. And don't have a ton of time to get into these, but we also discussed that you've expressed a desire to take this same tool, because you get to pick your objects, you pick your fields to predict some other things, like further definition to that membership model, the one that we've shown, but then predict things like donations. Like, what if you could craft a prediction for every time someone logs in their portal, rather than say, hey, you want to give us $50? Look at their historical spend and put the exact most likely amount they are to donate and display that individually for all of them. So maybe that's less than $50, but then you get something. And if they would give you more than $50, that's one example. Likelihood to attend the next annual meeting. Again, a bit of targeted information there, and plenty of other opportunities too. It's your data, you have it. Let's do our best to maximize it. And I think with that, I may have just went 1 minute over time, but I don't know if there are any questions online or compliments. Anybody?
Yeah, there's actually a question. How has this impacted your decision-making process?
To be determined.
I mean, we sort of
We're still early in this. We just got this built. We're entering our renewal season. So once we get into the early part of next year, we'll have a better idea of what this data means, how accurate was the predictions, with who's lapsing, and that'll help us kind of drive forward. I think when we do things with annual meeting, donations, merchandise, that will have a bigger impact on decision making now. Kind of what we're selling, where we're having a whole annual meeting, how we're marketing this.
Thanks.
Thanks, James. Thank you very much. Round of
Thank
applause
you.
for James.
Yeah.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Collier, for that presentation.